March 2nd, 1907, page 222. Encouraged by Marm's approval, I went upstairs to Dr. Baker's office today to talk to her. She welcomed me in, and I took a deep breath and I said I spoke to my mother about it, and I've decided to become a doctor. Her sober face broke into a gleaming smile, and she said, "Oh, Prudence, I'm so pleased. Our profession needs more women like you, with good minds and firm discipline. I'm positive you'll do well." I felt all the weight of her expectation and feared she thought Marm would be able to afford it. I had to tell her how impossible it would be, and I met her eyes and said, "Dr. Baker, as a midwife, my mother earns very little." The doctor held up her hand, stopping me. She said, "If you do well with your entrance examination, there will be occasions for funds donated or lent from prominent families. The New York moneyed families love to support smart girls like you." "I did have yearly funds to attend Mrs. Browning's," I said. "The first was given to me personally by Mrs. Morgan on my 6th birthday." I stopped. I meant to assure her of myself, but it had the tinny sounds of bragging. "Yes, we could ask the Morgans, or the Vanderbilts, or the Livingstons," she said, leaning back in her chair. She tapped her fingers together, looking at me with shrewd eyes. Then she turned and she reached behind her, pulling a book from the shelf. She held it and said, "You must do well on the test. In order to pass the entrance examination, you must have an overall understanding of the human system. Begin your studies with this." She handed me a book. It was titled The Biology of Man. She turned and reached again, this time producing True Blood Chemistry and the Myth of the Four Humors. "In exchange for your diligence, I will tutor you," she said. "We'll start with biology, the blood, and anatomy." She reached for Gray's Anatomy. When I told her I had a copy of the book at home, she raised an eyebrow at me with a small smile and took instead The Effect of Germs in Everyday Life, a book in the work of Dr. Louis Pasteur. "There is no time to waste," she said. "People's lives will depend on how well you know your material, Prudence." I pulled the heavy books from the desk and I hugged them to me. I felt as if she had turned a lens inside of me, and 100 questions came into focus. How difficult was the test? Where would I take it? Did I have a chance of passing it? Could a girl like me really go to medical school? As if she knew my questions, Dr. Baker said, "I will help you arrange for travel to Pennsylvania for the test. I have every confidence you will do well in the examination, Prudence, and that they will accept you into the school. I would not have recommended you this path if I didn't believe that." Dr. Baker picked up her pen and pulled a stack of papers towards her. I stood, feeling as if she had released me. "Then, when should I come for a tutoring session?" I inquired. "When you have finished reading those books," she said. "We will discuss the body, and then I'll take you to the dispensary where you can visit the patients with me." The thought of those dirty children I saw in the halls and their sad mothers, and the idea of tending them, of being given permission to examine them closely, posed a whole new series of questions. What would I see? How would I be able to help them? How did Dr. Baker decide what illness a person suffered from? By just looking at them. I returned downstairs, distracted by those questions, and Mr. Soper showed an instant curiosity about the books I was carrying, and he asked about them, his nearness of interest and a blush flaming up my neck. I looked down at the books, my heart pounding in my throat. I just came from Dr. Baker's office," I said. "She's encouraging me to go to medical school." His eyes took on a warm light, and he nodded. Is Dr. Baker helping you with the entrance exam?" he asked gently. "Yes, she is. She will be," I said. My cheeks felt fevered under his gaze. "Well, if you need further aid, let me know," he said. "I'm an engineer, but I do know a little something about medicine." How he smiled and looked at me, the kindness in his face, and I could barely thank him. Somehow I was able to escape the office that evening without revealing too much emotion. I can hardly allow myself to imagine Mr. Soper helping me study. What if I make a mistake, or I don't remember something? I don't want him to see me falter, and his nearness would cause distraction too great for me to overcome. Despite my ambition, I do not look forward to leaving my chief for the school. I feel sometimes as if I am an outline of myself, and each thing I learn from him is like a colored piece, a yarn that gets knitted inside of that outline, filling me, making me more defined. The longer I work for Mr. Soper, the more a pattern of him knits into me. He has become such an important, inseparable part of my whole being.